Welcome to the show, Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain. And I am really excited to be joined by the wonderful, powerful, fiery Neena Perez. Welcome to the show, Neena.
Thank you so much. I have been looking forward to this since we booked it. So I am ready to go,
Me too. I'm super excited to dive into your story. But before we do that, let's just introduce Neena for those that don't know, for the listeners. So Neena's a coach, entrepreneur, author, speaker, podcaster, and chef. And she's podcaster of her show, Straight Talk, No Sugar Added, which is really fiery and packs real punch. So make sure you check that one out. She uses all she has been through in her life to encourage and impact lives one at a time. And I'm excited to talk about your life because I think you've got an amazing journey of courage and hope to share with the audience. So before we start, I'd love to know for you, what is it you're really passionate about in your life right now? What really lights you up inside?
You know, what's been really lighting me up inside is that I'm finally finding like my groove when it comes to my coaching. I started doing a lot of spiritual coaching many, many years ago, but then I got into more emotional, and mental breaks, breaking that chains in your brain. But now I'm really passionate about helping women. Like I've been doing this a lot and I didn't realize how much I love it, is helping women like creating that business that they're envisioning and actually, putting it into practice so they can actually see it come to fruition. That has been so much fun. So that's really what I'm enjoying in life right now.
And I love that because it's so easy for us as women, isn't it, to kind of put ourselves down and maybe not think that we're capable based on our past experiences. Maybe people have put us down in our past, and to have the ability to help women step into their authentic self and really leverage the power of who they are so that they can reach that next level in business is just so important in today's world. So
it's really important. And it also, it drives me because I'm a person who loves to create. So I'm an entrepreneur as well. And I just love doing things like that. But to see women have like these amazing ideas that are inside of them that they just don't know how to birth yet, And so to help them like navigate that and then see them actually doing it and thriving, it's like, so having so much fun doing that. It's really, really a joy. Yeah.
I can imagine. And I just, before we dive into your journey, what for you, based on your life experience, would you say is optimal brain health? And there's no right or wrong answer here. It's
optimal
personal.
Brain health. I think for me, optimal brain health is breaking all of those beliefs in my life that really limited me. And so it really feels freeing, if that's the right word I can use, when you feel free, when your brain feels free to create without having something constantly self-sabotaging you or pulling you down or telling you you're not good enough. When you can actually start creating and doing things and your brain feels like it's like excited to do things instead of fearful of doing things, that to me is like optimum brain health.
Yeah. And I love that, not many people talk about breaking free of their limiting beliefs, but we can believe in ourselves, or we can believe that we're not capable, and having that, creating the switch into something that's a positive belief in what we truly can accomplish, rather than something that's going to deplete our energy, deplete our personal power, is so important, because the stories that we tell ourselves really shape who we are, and we can be our own worst enemy. Somebody could cut us once, but then we replay it and cut ourselves 1,000 times.
Yeah, death by 1,000 cuts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it starts when we're young, so and this, you're Dr. Ruth.
Well, I don't think people take the time to really check in on their beliefs.
Yeah.
And
sometimes you don't know you have them.
No, right. That's right. Because we're not consciously aware of what we're telling ourselves. It's like this background our computer hardware has some software that's been installed that is running in the background and slowing down our computer, which is our brain, and making things go wonky and not work optimally. And a lot of that is the internal self-talk.
And we don't even, you're right. I mean, it just kind of sneaks up on you. You don't even realize it. And you go through this hamster wheel for a while until one day for me, it's always starting with self, right? It's literally pausing and starting with self. Like, instead of pointing fingers or thinking that someone else had a problem or it's their fault or whatever that thing is that you're telling yourself that you can't do, then you have to realize how much. For me, it's also taking what you have already done. I think many of us are stopping ourselves because we don't think we can do something because we don't realize how much we've already done. So if you can come to this situation that you're at right now in your life and realize all the tools, the knowledge, the grit, the know-how, everything that you have developed throughout all of those obstacles in your past, you will see how much you can actually conquer whatever's in front of you right now.
Yeah, right? I think that's so true. And I have a saying is that if you struggle to comprehend how far you've got to go, acknowledge how far you've come, take one step forward and keep going.
Right.
And we sometimes we don't take that time to reflect, do we? And say, right, 5 years ago I was here and now I've, moved to this space in my life. And it might not be a financial gain, but it might be a personal gain. Or vice versa. It's acknowledging what the shift has been and celebrating it.
Right. I mean, we've learned so much in our lives already. I mean, even if you just wanted to be, silly enough to say you learned how to walk, if you're a person who walks, right? You've learned how to grab things. You've learned how to talk. If you're listening to this podcast, you're understanding language. You know what I mean? Like, all of these things are right. Like, all of these things are actually something you have already conquered. And you might think it's a little thing because you've already conquered it. But in reality, those are big things. And, and so if you just took account of that, you would realize how much you actually can do. You can learn new things. I don't care what age you are. You can reprogram your brain. I don't care what age you are.
You can.
Yeah, you can. You just have to stop and actually want to do the work. It is work. After all.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes people think that it's an easy journey. And when they take that first step and it feels a bit hard,
that's when your brain kicks in. Your brain kicks in and says, we don't want to do that. That's uncomfortable. Right? No, come on. Neena, don't do that. Ew, and it's because we've been telling ourselves that for years. So how is our brain supposed to think differently or give us different advice when we have been feeding it negativity or limiting beliefs or things like that in our life? And then all of a sudden we want to do the work for one day, and the next day we're supposed to have it all together. And then when we don't have it all together, we're disappointed.
Exactly. And I think what's really interesting, from a brain health or a brain evolution perspective, is that all the way throughout our early development of our brains, someone is there to support us in our growth, in our learning. They might not provide the right support, but they're there as a handrail to grab onto. But at some point in adulthood, we don't think we need anybody as a handrail, as a guide to help us. We think we can do this all by ourselves often. And it's when we think, I should be able to do this all by myself, and that's an ant right there, the should ant, the berating ant, guilt beating ant, which is an automatic negative thought is an ant. And we've got, and some people have massive ant infestations in their head, is that because we don't ask for help, or because we don't reach out for support or look to people that have walked this path before us, which is what this show is all about, is people have walked all sorts of different paths, and some of them have been really tricky, and others, all different, but there's similarities to stories that the listeners will be having personally, is that you then have something to hold on to, a handrail or a guide, and somebody to ask for help. But we don't take that time, do we, sometimes to reach out and ask, do you know what, I haven't got this all dialed in. I don't know which way I'm going. Like you said, in helping women in business realize their potential.
Right. Right.
It's
Well, a lot of times it's limiting
cool.
beliefs and thinking that anybody cares, or like, well, they don't really care, or I really can't find it, or I'm going to bother, or I'm bothering people. We have all of these limiting beliefs that we put on stuff, so you always feel like maybe if you tell them that you're a nuisance, or that they're going to see you less than, or that you're not going to be credible enough, and all of those are lies. You'd be surprised, Dr. Ruth, is if you reach out to someone and they really do care about you, and they're going to be there for you. They're not even going to question that. Right. But
Right.
we have all of these stories and narratives that we tell ourselves, so we don't move forward.
Yeah. I'd love to dive into your story and your
Sure.
narrative that you have from your past, and how it's turned you into the superpower that you are today. Could you just take us back a bit to tell
Sure.
us what was the real start state for you, where you realized you needed to look after your brain health?
It was many years ago, but a little bit of my backstory is, as a child, I was molested by my stepfather for a couple of years, but it didn't even start there, Dr. Ruth. It kind of started at birth, because my father, my biological father, rejected me.
Wow.
He was married to another woman, and my mother and him had an affair. I was born, and so he didn't want to claim me, because then he would lose his family. And so I was
Right.
rejected from birth, right? And then had a stepfather who I thought was like my father. He was amazing, I thought. And soon after started molesting me. So from there, I had a really horrific domestic violent relationship that almost ended in my murder. I had a child at 15 years old.
Wow.
It's like I've been through a lot of trauma, a lot of like not feeling worthy, a lot of you're not good enough. I have this personality in me, though. I have I survive, right? I'm a
Mhm.
survivor. So I'll put on my boots and I'll just keep on going. And I just keep on going. Although I might have been depressed, had anxiety, had worry all the time. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of that kind of stuff. But I still rose to the top anyway, because I'm programmed that way. So if
Mhm.
you put me somewhere, I'm going to rise. It's just
Mhm.
how I do it, even if I feel a little bent or broken you know?
Mhm.
So it was time to take care of what was going on inside of me, instead of all externally. Like externally, you would think, oh, she got it. She got this. She's good. But internally, I wasn't good, you
Yeah.
know?
And
Go
I
ahead.
think that's a really important point, because, I just spoke to another guest, Natasha, who's on the show, and she talked about other people see you, that you've got everything dialed in, everything's
Mhm,
nice and rosy, and she was a go go go. She just had to keep going, keep doing things.
mhm, mhm.
And actually, that was her escape mechanism. Was that the same for you? Is just the keep going, keep
Oh, yeah.
driving was your escape away from the
Oh, yeah.
internal emotional trauma
Well,
and
it makes
pain
you
of your
feel like you're important. Yeah, it makes you feel like you're important. It makes you feel like you're accomplishing something. So you don't have to sit with yourself, because that's not a good place,
yeah,
because when you have to sit with yourself, you got to like look at your life, and yeah, things might be okay. I mean, they're not great, but they're okay. But inside, you just want to go under a blanket and cover yourself. You know how many times I wanted to ram my car into a tree and just end it?
wow,
How many times I wanted to just go over a bridge. Every time I go over the bridge, this high temptation of like running my car off a bridge. You know what I'm saying? Like it that was real. That was
yeah,
real. But I had kids, and there's no way I was going to leave my kids. That's the only thing that stopped me, Dr. Ruth. Now, I don't know if I would have had them in my life or not, had I not actually done it. I'm going to be honest.
mm,
But being that I was a mom, I couldn't leave them, and a single
yeah,
mom at one point, I couldn't leave them, but it was a
yeah,
real feeling to do that, to just end it. And I had to do something about that, Dr. Ruth. You have to do something about that when you are hitting, or when you want to hit a wall,
yeah. Rather than you're hitting it, you want to
literally,
hit
you
it.
literally want to hit a wall, and
Yeah,
figuratively when you hit a wall, like you have to take notice. You have to go, something's wrong here, and I
yeah.
need something. For
And what
me,
was that real
yeah.
pivot point there? Because I had the same, started having
Yeah.
suicidal thoughts for me personally,
Mhm.
when I reached, shortly after having a miscarriage and being told by the firm I had no emotional intelligence, whilst
Right.
dealing with the grief, and it was really, that when I started having the suicidal thoughts, I thought, this is not right. What was the tipping point for you where you thought, I need to do something about this?
Well, besides my kids having to keep alive for them, that's one thing that prevented it. Another thing for me was my faith. I found faith. I grew up Catholic, but I kind of walked away from that. And then I tried other types of religions and things. Nothing really worked. And really, my faith, I ended up just finding God, to be honest with you. I found God in my life, and it really started to change me. I started to realize how much I am loved. How much I have been watched over. When my ex, the one I was in the violent relationship with, he put a gun to my head, Dr. Ruth, and he pulled the trigger. And the only reason I'm sitting here is because the safety got jammed in the gun. Had that safety not gotten jammed, I would not be sitting here today.
Yeah.
So
someone was looking out for you.
Someone was looking after me, right? And so that changed my whole perspective on, wait a second. You know what I'm saying? If God loves me, maybe I need to be exploring that a little bit here. What's going on here? And that's what started to change me. But then I got really into that, and also personal development. And as I started reading books and realizing how much the brain has power, how much what you're thinking has power, and how much the past has no power.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to, and so it wasn't like a quick switch. It was like a gradual learning and growing, and I'm still learning and growing. But I like where I am today. I wish I had this person 20 years ago,
Yeah.
That's why I do the coaching I do, because I feel like I can serve a woman that maybe was me 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's why I do it.
I'd love to go back, if you're willing to just explore just a little bit your adverse childhood experiences from in the context of your brain development, because I think
that's good.
We downplay the impact often that an adverse childhood experience, like you being molested by your stepfather, can have on children, because they don't exhibit it at the time it's occurring necessarily, because you find a coping mechanism to deal with it. What was your coping mechanism at the time when that was going on? Because obviously how old were you when that happened?
I was about 6 years old. I want to say 6 or 7, and it happened until about 8 or 9, about 2 years. 2-3 years. So thank you for even mentioning that, because you're right. And I even do that. I even kind of glance over that until I hear a child talk about it. And then I'm like, could you please not ignore this child? Because I felt like an adult in a little person's body.
Right.
And I knew this was wrong. I knew it was wrong, even though nobody ever talked to me about it. Nobody ever explained what that was. I knew 100% this was wrong. And so when he first touched me, it scared me. I was like, what the freak was that? I don't want to play anymore. I don't want to play anymore. I said, and I just, no.
Yeah.
But when I told my mom, and my mom hates to hear this, but it's true. Like when I told her, she said, stop lying, shut up and stop lying. Right.
Yeah.
That shattered my whole world. I felt completely alone. I felt neglected. I felt unwanted. I felt unloved. And as a child, that is huge to feel that way. Huge.
Yeah.
Especially because he's my stepfather and my mother had 2 boys by him. So I'm the black sheep. I'm nobody. That's how you feel.
That's what you were telling yourself.
Yeah. That's how you feel instantly.
Yeah.
Because here he is.
And you had the layer before, of course, from rejection as a,
right. Without having my father. Exactly. And so you have this man who you thought loved you as your father is hurting you, and your mom is not protecting you, and they have their own family, their husband and wife and the 2 little boys. And you are this thing. That's how you feel as a little kid. Sugar was my coping mechanism. Food was my coping mechanism. Right. It wasn't really food in abundance because I don't eat heavy, like a lot of things. Even as a kid, I didn't, but I do like sugar. I used to take spoonfuls, like literally a bowl and spoons of sugar, and it was my comfort. It made me feel good. you
Yeah,
know?
as it would release serotonin, which made you feel happy. So
Yeah, I didn't know what
it was
that was.
your
That's what it was doing, but yeah.
medication, your self-medication.
It was medication, right. It was self-medication, and it was something that stayed with me most of my life. You know, I'm still
Yeah,
at this age, I'm handling it better, but I still struggle with it, you know?
yeah,
And so I know, and as soon as, and it's funny, like you're talking about brain development and all that, and even like when I notice that I'm about to self-sabotage myself or do something after I've worked out and done, I'm like, what is that? What are we looking at here? What's this piece? You know? And it's that you don't feel worthy, you don't feel like you're good enough, you don't feel like
mhm,
you can, or that you deserve to be healthy, or that you just, so my coping mechanism was that. And because I was in fear a lot.
sure,
Uh, I was in abundance of fear all the
yeah,
time,
yeah.
and
And of
that's
course,
not
you were
good.
in that in the within the house, not
Right,
knowing when
right.
the next strike was going to happen,
Right.
and
I
so
mean,
there was no escape
right. No,
other
there
than
isn't, but
running away.
especially when nobody's protecting you, right? Because the only other person
Exactly.
I can look for is my mom. I mean, she's the other adult in the house. And so when she
Yeah.
would leave and the door would close behind her when she would go to work, it would be like somebody put a cold blanket over my body. It was like everything
Wow.
would drain from me because I didn't know if that was another night that I had to fight.
Wow.
It's just an awful feeling. And
Yeah.
so kids need to be cared for. They shouldn't be ignored when they think things like that. And
Yeah.
and you shouldn't think that they can get over it because kids are resilient. Yeah, they are because they have no choice. But that
Well,
doesn't
they have
mean,
to
yeah,
survive.
exactly. But nobody wants to live in survival mode all the time, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really key here because Charlie Smith, who was earlier on the show, talks about, how his father was very abusive to him, and externally everything was nice and rosy. His
Hmm.
father was, leading member in the community, and but at home it was a completely different story. And actually his
Right.
escape was education. Even though his father was in education, he was a leader in education, but that was his
Hmm.
ticket out.
Right.
What was your eventual ticket out of that
I think
situation?
I think my ticket, well, my mother ended up leaving him when I was around 10 years old, so all of that
Okay.
stopped, all of that with him stopped. But I think what honestly, and I always say this, I told my son this, I had him at 15 years old. I was a baby having a baby, but he
Mhm.
saved my life. He saved
Wow.
my life because having him, I completely like, I got to go to school, I got to finish high school, I got to get 2 jobs, I got to take care of my son, and that's all I focused on was him and his
Yeah.
life. And although his father was the one that tried to kill me, I ended up living in a battered women's shelter with my son.
Wow.
But still, that made me so. I'm just such a go-getter. I just don't let too many things pull me down, and I think it's because of those experiences, right? So
Yeah.
they tried to break me for a while. I was a victim. I had a victim mentality. I was
Mhm.
always like, "Woe is me" type of thing. But what
Mhm.
happened with me, Dr. Ruth, is when I found that faith, I realized I'm not a victim. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need to really start letting go of this, whatever this victim thing is. And I started working on that. I started working on affirmations. I started working
Yeah.
on who I am as a person and instead of always focusing on the negatives of my life, I started
Yeah.
focusing on all I did that was good. And
What
that
you've
changed
got.
a lot of things. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And I know you really glossed over quickly that your husband put a gun to your head and pulled the
Mhm.
trigger.
Mhm.
And obviously, thankfully, the safety catch got
Yeah.
stuck.
Right.
What what was it for you at that point that happened? That what was going through your mind at that point? That obviously you said your son saved your life.
Mhm, mhm. Well, what happened that particular day when he did that, all I could, because he said he was gonna kill me, then he was gonna make sure he killed the baby, then he was gonna kill himself.
Wow.
And all I can think of is I have to save my son. I have to save my
Hmm.
son. And so I sent my son downstairs to my mom's because we were living upstairs in my mom's house, and I begged and pleaded for my life, which didn't work because he still put the gun to my head and pulled the trigger. But at that moment, all I could think of is survival, right? So then I just said to him, but I love you. You know, I did all the I love you things and whatever until he calmed down. Once he calmed down, I took the gun away and gave it to the person who actually gave him the gun, which was a friend of ours. I didn't
Uh-huh.
realize that at the time.
Can I
But
just stop you there? I just really
yeah,
want to stop you because that's a really
sure.
powerful point that's very
Right.
different for women from a brain health perspective
Hmm.
than it is for men in terms of your response to a death
Um,
situation.
yeah.
So there's different modes of response when our amygdala is activated, which is within our fight or flight part of our brain. And one of the elements that we have as women, which is talked in Lisa Mosconi's book, The XX Brain, it
Mm.
is the tend and befriend survival mechanism, which men don't tend to have. And you have just exhibited that in spades, is that in order for you to not only survive for yourself, but this tend and befriend is to help survival of the species in that
Wow.
moment, is you did exactly that. You
Hmm.
tended to his needs and you befriended him away in a way that appeased the situation,
Hmm.
calmed it down to the point that you could make it safe.
Right.
And I
Right.
don't think that we spend much time really thinking about how women have to adapt and have, evolved to adapt in
Right.
near death situations. And not, fortunately, it was a near death and not a death situation
Right.
because you're telling
Right.
your story in order to support the next generation, which is exactly what you did. So just really applaud you for being able
Wow.
to do that.
Yeah, nobody's ever even told me that before. That's really powerful. Thank you.
No, you're
Wow,
welcome. You're
that's really
welcome.
powerful because I never thought about it that way. I just thought I need to survive, right? I
Yeah.
need my baby to survive. And so if it means that I have to BS this guy so that he cannot kill us, then that's what I'm
Right.
going to do, you know?
Right.
And I did. I made him dinner that night. He slept like a baby, and as soon as I got up in the morning, I kissed him goodbye. I waited for him to leave, and I took my baby and I was out, you know,
Yeah.
and I went to the shelter and I lived there for a year.
Yeah. And I
But
think that's really powerful that you're telling this story, because some people think, how is it that this woman can stay with this guy, in the
mhm,
women in domestic violence situations.
mhm,
And it's because we get stuck to a
yes,
degree in our response mechanism, which is tend
mhm,
and befriend,
mhm,
because that's inbuilt within our, evolution, to make sure that we support the survival of our species, or the next generation, as well
so
as
true,
ourselves.
so
And
true.
unfortunately, you were able to break that
Mhm,
and shift into an alternative uh, response mechanism, because your amygdala was activated, which was flight.
right,
So you were
right,
able to switch.
right,
Um,
yes,
but some
yes.
people can't switch; they get stuck.
It's a very fearful situation too, Dr. Ruth.
Yeah,
Like when the times that I did flee, you know, and it was dangerous. It was very dangerous because
absolutely.
he would follow me and threaten my life, and it was a very dangerous situation. So you always thought, if I can try to not make him angry today, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like maybe we'll just survive another day till I figure this out. You know,
yeah.
I mean that's really what it is. It's survival. Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. And then that's how we're programmed. So,
Hmm.
I think just amazing that you managed to leverage your inherent superpower
Yeah, I didn't know.
to get through it. So you went to the shelter with
Mhm.
your son, and you were able to escape. How did the situation evolve for you then?
Well, when we went there, I mean, he did find us. He did find us there, but I didn't realize I was befriending him, but I befriended him. I tried to tell him, you know, this is good for both of us, you know, type of thing. He actually eventually started to get over the fact that I had left, and he was starting to get over the fact that I'm not with him anymore. He was still a little violent, but not as violent as putting the
Yeah,
gun to my head, you know. And then I lived in a shelter for a year and a half. So as Neena does, I rise to the occasion. I didn't know this about me. I started learning this about me in my like 40s. I'm going to be 50. But even like in the shelter, I started as the victim, And I
Yeah.
quickly, as I was there for the year, ended up becoming a women's counselor. So I ended up counseling some of the women too, like a peer-to-peer
Wow.
counseling type of thing. Because that's just the way my brain works. It's like I can't
Yeah.
stay stuck here. There's so many levels. I need to find out what's going on up there, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how it's been in most of my careers. That's how it's been in my businesses. That's just how my brain operates. Thank God. Thank God.
Yeah.
Because I could definitely be a victim. I can actually sit in my woes, and honestly, people reading my story in my book would probably say it's okay. She can do that, you know, but I
Yeah.
just can't do that. I can't, you know, it's not in me.
And obviously you know you one of the things that has been your driver, because we look at the 4 quadrants of well-being and you've really dived into 2 of them. So the 4 is the emotional, physical, mental and spiritual well-being, and your emotional well-being, you know, you're in a constant state of threat.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
your mechanism for escape was physically to
Yeah.
keep going,
Right.
to
Right.
find a way to keep going, and one of those ways was tend and befriend. How
Mm-hmm.
did you leverage your logical thinking part of your brain, which is the mental well-being piece, to really help you move to that next transition in your life? Was that the piece that you used, or was it the spiritual element, which is finding God? What was the next transition? Because obviously your big driver, your big focus for moving in life has been, you know, doing
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
doing, which is the second pillar of brain health, the actions. But what
Yeah.
other aspects did you tap into to really?
To kind of like help me move forward, you mean? On
Yeah.
like a different level?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was definitely, I think logical started coming in my 30s or so. I
Right.
think I was just tired, Dr. Ruth. I'll be honest with you. I think I was just
I'm not
exhausted.
surprised. People that are constantly doing burn themselves
Yeah.
out
Yeah, 'cause
physically.
yeah, you do, and mentally, like, you're like, "Okay, this is not working. I'm
Yeah.
exhausted, I'm tired." So you start to say, "Okay, what is it that I need to do here?" Right? So my spiritual part of it came in about my late 20s, early 30, and that was
Mhm.
great. I ended up going to school to, like, lead women and be a spiritual leader and coach, and I did that for a year, and I loved it, and it was great to pour
Wow.
into other people. But that also became exhausting because I have to rise to the top, and right, and now I'm leading, instead of 3 women, it's, 15 to 25 women every week, and it's became a lot.
Mhm.
And then I realized that there's I started to, like I said, take inventory of my life
Mhm.
and all I have overcome and all that I have transitioned into and all that I've done and developed, all these tools now that I have in my tool belt. And when I started to write my book, which was like in 2018,
Mm.
I realized how cathartic it was to go through my story and to realize all that I have accomplished in my life. I'm going back to college at 30 years old, getting my
Wow.
bachelor's degree at 35, it's like that kind of stuff. And I realized, damn, Neena, you're a smart cookie. You're really strong. You're a go-getter. You got this. So now what are we going to do with all of that information? And that's when I just started keeping developing myself and pouring into women, and pouring women is really what I love to pour into.
Mm.
And so I find that I connect better with women, and and I also, a lot of my story is their story, and so we have
Yeah.
that common ground.
Mm.
So that's what I think. I started using my brain more logically in my 30s, when I started to realize that this constant state of stress wasn't working.
Yeah. And you know, I think people that are those go-getters that use the physical aspect of well-being to escape the emotional trauma that they've
Mhm.
experienced, or the physical trauma that they've experienced, they often end up in a burnout situation,
Yeah.
because their body's always on, they're always
Right,
going and
right,
never stopping. And
right,
what they end up doing is wearing out the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal glands, and the axis associated with that. which causes high level, we've got high levels of cortisol running through our system. And eventually the body starts to say, do you know what, this is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And the
That
body
happened to
kind
me.
of
That
breaks
happened to
down.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, then your body breaks down because these last like 4 or 5 years, I've developed a bunch of autoimmune conditions that are causing me a lot of issues, physical issues, and I know
Mm-hmm.
it's the high constant stress level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've now started working on that. I've
Mm-hmm.
started really like listing things that I can control, things that I cannot control, scratching those things I can't control out because I'm not going to stress them anymore. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I'm also listening to my body better. Like, okay, so is this food good for you? Is this, behavior good for you? Is this work good for you? What are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to it always is going to come back to self-reflection.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. And sometimes, for people like yourself who are very much go, 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 sometimes the go is actually the stop,
Yeah.
which is still an action.
Right.
And we
Right.
have to stop and pause. That's an action
Right.
in its own right. And
Right.
we don't give ourselves that permission to stop and reflect and go, do you know what? Like you said earlier, enough's enough.
Mm-hmm.
What,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't working for me. What do I need to do differently?
Right.
Because we're constantly in the cycle. Well, if I just keep going, it will be all right. If I just keep going like a hamster wheel going round and round, and you just
Right.
keep running.
Right. Or
And
you
it's not
jump
all
off
right.
and jump back on the hamster wheel. You jump off and you jump back on the hamster wheel, because now becomes a pattern, right? Now it's a habit and a pattern. So it's a habit to be in constant stress. It's a habit to be constantly going. And I used to feel like really weird if I wasn't constantly going. Like I would be like, something's wrong, and it wouldn't be nothing wrong. Though what's wrong is that you're resting. That's what's
Right.
wrong. Your body's like, what is this?
Yeah. And I always used to be a go, 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 and I had to keep doing everything. And what I would find for myself personally is as soon as I stopped, normally it's a holiday, my body would crash. And I'd
Right.
spend half of my holiday sick
Right.
because my body was like, yay.
Right. And then you
I
got to get a
couldn't
holiday
reboot
from the
myself.
holiday. Yeah.
So I'd love to go back to your journey, out of the shelter, and the fact that you became a counselor to the women within that
Mhm.
that particular shelter. And how did you transition out of that into the next phase of your life, if you wouldn't mind sharing that?
Yeah, no, I ended up getting married. So I ended up leaving the shelter and renting a room from my aunt, and I moved out, and I met a young man, and we got married. And that was another traumatic experience. He wasn't violent at all physically, nor would I have tolerated that in my life
Mm-hmm.
anymore. But he was emotionally not an abuser, but manipulative.
Okay.
And then we had my son, of course, and then we had another little boy, and I was 21 when I married him, and I think I was like 27 or so, and he got up one day and said, I need to find myself, and he left us. He left me and the kids, and
Wow.
off with a teenager, with a 17-year-old, and left our family.
Wow.
So
Just like
yeah,
that.
just like that. And I was like, what do you mean you got to be, there's a mirror right there. Look, you're found. Like, what are you talking about? And he left and never came back. Like he came back, like, weekend visits with the kids or whatever, but he never
Yeah.
came back to the family. He left us. He just left us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that was another traumatic experience in my life. And I got into some different types of religions and all this kind of stuff, just trying to find something. I was depressed. I was anxious. I felt ugly. I felt fat. I felt stupid. Like I felt all of these things because, he left me for he left me for a 17-year-old. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So and she was thin and pretty and 17, and I'm here almost 30, and, like all those things
So you
women go
started looking at
through.
all the things you didn't have
Right.
and all of your failings, which had nothing to
Right.
do with you whatsoever.
Right.
And
Right.
and none of your time looking at what you had,
Right.
which
Exactly.
was freedom from
Right.
somebody that was manipulative.
Yes. And of course, in hindsight, you see that, right? But at the time, I was super depressed. And I
Oh
think
yeah,
women beat themselves up a lot, especially if you are already at a place where you don't feel worthy. And then somebody
absolutely.
leaves you or hurts you that way, you really don't feel worthy. Like there has to be something wrong with me, you
Yeah,
know? And so, raising two kids on my own was super tough, working 14-hour days while my kids are taking care of themselves, really, and then I finally met the husband I'm with now, which I'm with for 23 years now. And yeah, he was amazing, and he just supports it. I'm like, babe, I'm gonna go build a bridge. Okay, babe, I'll support you. He doesn't care what I can do 20 things. He's like, yes, go for it. Like because of him, I went back to college. Because of him, I had somebody to help me with the kids. Because of him, I
wow.
started my coaching business. Because of him, I started my podcast. Because when you have support like that, you can do anything, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It sounds like he's your angel walking on earth.
Yeah. Yeah. We had our times. We had our tough times. It's all in the book, which he won't read because he said, I know what I did. I don't want to read about it. But we got through it. We got through it, Dr. Ruth. You need sometimes every coach needs a coach. Every person needs a therapist. I feel like, everybody needs a village. You need people to help you through it.
Absolutely, you really do, and I
You
think
really do.
we really downplay it to ourselves. We think we can
Hmm.
survive. Nobody achieves success by themselves,
That's right.
but
That's
it's
right.
easy to fail by yourself.
Sure the heck is. I know that.
So I'd love to transition to fun facts.
Okay,
Uh,
let's do it.
to
Let's
ask
do
you
it.
questions around the 5 pillars of brain health, which is
Okay.
remembered by the mnemonic facts: feelings, actions, connections, thoughts, and surroundings. And I'm just going to
Okay.
dive into a couple of questions.
Okay. Let's
So
do it.
let's dive into feelings. What's the funniest or most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
Okay. So it always brings up this one story. I remember when I was like in high school or something. I think it was high school, and we were hanging out with a bunch of girls, right? And we were talking and laughing, whatever. And I started talking about this guy who was a complete ass, right? Like this guy was such an ass. And we were talking and he's like, oh, he's such a jerk. And blah, blah, and I'm going on and on and on. And then finally the girl goes, which guy are you talking about? I'm like, that guy. She goes, oh, really? He's an ass. Yes, he's a jerk. She goes, that's my brother. I'm like, well, you're and I was a little bit like, oh shit. But I looked at her and said, well, your brother's an ass. And we just all started laughing. And she's like, you know what? I think you're right. I think he is a little bit of an ass. But that was like the funniest and the most embarrassing thing. I'm like, oh shoot, how am I gonna get myself out of this one? I'm like, screw it. Neena always tells the truth. So here you go.
The truth, know the truth, and the truth shall set you
Yeah,
free.
exactly. We became good friends after that. So I guess it was all right.
And I know we've talked a lot about actions and the fact that you're such a go-getter and you just keep going, going, going.
Mhm.
So I'd love to dive into the second pillar, which is actions.
Okay.
What's the most rewarding or
Mhm.
fulfilling thing you've ever done?
So there's a few because I've had a lot of things in my life, but I think the most rewarding thing I ever done was to become the valedictorian of my college at 33 or 35 years old.
Wow.
That was really a cool freaking moment. I was an adult. Of course, everybody, most of the people around me were like 20, 18, right? Because they're all coming out of, high school into college. And here I am at 30 something going into college. But to become the valedictorian and the speaker of the entire class was freaking awesome. And then to have my kids, my babies who are now grown, sit there and like be like, Mom, we're so proud of you, Mom. And me giving this amazing speech. I was rewarding. I was really proud of that.
And I'd love for you to explain a little bit more to the listeners over here in the UK what a
Yeah. A
valedictorian is.
valedictorian is I had the highest GPA, so it was like 4 point something GPA, and
Wow.
I was the
So the
class
highest score
speaker.
within your class or
Hmm.
across the
Yeah,
whole of the.
of that
Yeah.
graduating class. Yeah, and I was the one speaker that spoke for the entire body,
Wow.
of students. Yeah, it was
Wow.
very,
So you
very
were
honored.
the
I was
total
so honored.
representative. Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Well done.
And
Wow.
that's while going to college and being homeless because I was homeless at the time. So I was
Goodness.
homeless and everything, but I still went through it every day while homeless, while sleeping on floors and in my car and in my, my friend's
And
couch.
dealing with children.
And yep. And I don't know how I did it. I think it's all God, but I did it. And that's my proudest moment.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's such an
Oh, thank you.
accomplishment,
Thank you for asking.
particularly, given the circumstances you were in at the time, for so many people around you, they would have had a much more stable, shall we say, lifestyle that would have, given them the time, but you made the
Mhm.
time for yourself to educate yourself, and I think
Yeah.
that's an amazing accomplishment.
Thank you. Well, after you're told that you'll never go to college, you're just, a Hispanic woman with a 15. Yeah, I was 15 when I had him. So you're like, oh, you're just
Yeah.
excuse the word, but this is exactly what I was told. You're just a spick with a kid. You're never going to go anywhere,
Wow.
And I was like, wow. I mean, like that was deep, that was from an adult, that was from a teacher. And I was like, wow, you know, and so I had to do it, Dr. Ruth, because
Yeah.
I had to show my kids, yeah, nah, these people are not going to get the final say. I am,
No.
you
And
know.
I think I love that because I've had people also tell me, when I was at university, you're not intelligent enough to do a PhD.
Wow, people are
You should go
something.
and join the military. And it just
Wow.
ignited a fire inside me
Yeah, me too.
to like
Me
say,
too.
I'm going to
Mhm.
prove you wrong,
Right,
prove you
right.
wrong.
Exactly. I'm so
But
glad we
not only
did.
prove them wrong, prove to myself that I'm capable, which was the more
Exactly.
important thing.
That's so
Thank
cool.
you for sharing. Wow.
Yeah,
And just want to dive into one more.
sure.
Um, and I'm going to go for thoughts because we started off with
Mm,
beliefs and limiting beliefs. What's
yeah.
the what stupid or crazy thought have you often told yourself in the past that isn't true?
I can't do it. I mean,
Oh,
that's one of the thoughts I can't do it. I can't do it. Or the other limiting belief, I tried. I already tried, but I can't. And I realized that that has held me back so much in my life, just really thinking I can't do something.
mm.
I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever thought. Yeah.
And so many of us say this to ourselves, don't they?
Yeah.
I can't. And my
Yeah.
husband actually says, I I can't means I won't, and
Right.
I won't means jail.
Right. It's funny.
Because ultimately it's not that you can't, it's just
Right. You don't.
you don't want to. Try again.
Right.
It's like saying to ourselves, and I know I say this to myself too. I tried, and we easily give up on ourselves, but we
Yeah.
don't give up on ourselves when we're a child learning to
Right.
walk. We don't
Right.
just take that first step and say, "Ah,
Yeah.
I tried."
Right. Exactly. But the limiting beliefs haven't come in yet. So you keep trying. Right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's
Awesome.
the environment that shapes those limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And for you, your environment, from birth,
Right.
shaped your brain and the self-talk that started to form within your brain at a very, very young age,
Right.
which obviously you had to unravel.
Yeah. The second part of my life is definitely going to look better than the first. That's for sure.
So I'd love to dive back into your journey now,
Mhm.
back on the road of discovery, and uncovering your superpower.
Mm.
And I want to go back to the fact that we often we spend a lot of our time focusing on what we can't do
Mhm. Mhm.
and not enough time celebrating what we can do and
Right.
celebrating the strengths that we have.
Right. Right. And so, I mean, a few years ago, I started to, I was getting antsy. I was in the medical field for about 15 years. I was a medical assistant and an ultrasound technician. And I realized there was something in me calling me back to go to school. I always say it definitely was God calling me back to go to school. And that's when I went back to school. I became a chef.
Wow.
And so I became a chef and of course started as a dishwasher, right? But now I'm a director of culinary operations because I will always rise to the
Keep
top.
going.
That is just how I work, right? And then so So I still do that. Like I still do kids videos for cooking and all that kind of stuff, because I think kids always, that's a good thing for kids to do, is to be creative and to cook and all that. And that's in my heart. So that's definitely something I do. And I also have my coaching business. So my coaching business started off with NLP work. So the neuro linguistic programming was really fun and everything, and dealing with that. But what I realized my superpower is reaching into these women and pulling out the gift that they have already inside of them. And I've always had that, because I did that spiritually as well. And so now seeing that, I think that's my superpower, right? It's just looking at somebody, seeing what they are gifted really to do, and then helping them discover that. And that
And
has
you've
been a
shown that in
journey.
spades, haven't you? Because you've literally done that your whole life, is looking inside yourself and going, do you know what?
Right.
I can.
Right.
I can do
That's
this, and
amazing.
no one's
I
going to
never
get in
even
my
saw it like
way.
that. Yeah. That's thank you for saying that. That's really going to stick with me. I never thought about it that way, because I'm always thinking externally, right? I'm always thinking of, other people, but you're right. Yes. I mean, I'm the one that had to look at me and say, Neena, you can do this. Let's go.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
good. That's good.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I think we don't, often what we project, the people that we help is a mirror of ourselves at some point within our life.
Yeah,
because
sure.
we can relate, because
That's
they've
so
got
true.
a similar story, and we know that we can help them because we've
Mm-hmm.
been down the journey ourselves, and we know what, we're the guide, or we're the handrail, and they still got to walk the path, but we know which way to take them,
Right.
and
It's
to
beautiful.
help them lift them up if they fall over,
Right.
get back on the wagon again.
I love
And
it.
help them find that power within themselves to just keep going.
Right. I mean, it's like
And
what you're doing, right? I mean, you've been through a lot of things yourself, right? And so to be able to sit here and have this conversation with me, we can relate, because we've been through some traumas and some things in our life. And it's a beautiful thing when we can do this kind of stuff. Podcasting is fun. Talking to people is fun. Having a coaching practice is fun, because if you can see somebody break those chains, which is, I know that's like what you love to do, is unchaining the brain. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful gift.
Yeah. And I think it's something that we don't take enough time to do at a personal level.
Yes, so
We
true.
bury it.
Yes, so true.
We sort of like, physical pain.
Right.
We're quite good at dealing with. We go, it hurts. I will go and get a plaster, or I'll go and do something to fix it. Sometimes the solution is go and take 2 painkillers, Adderall, or whatever it's called in the States, paracetamol, Tylenol, and it doesn't necessarily fix it. It just numbs it.
Right.
It doesn't remove the source of the pain. But our body is very good at healing itself. So we might take Tylenol or paracetamol to take away the immediate pain, but actually our body will do the physical healing and heal the wounds that we see, on our body, because it's incredibly powerful and incredibly clever, far more clever than any drug can be. But we don't take the time, do we, to really unchain our pain at an emotional level, or at a spiritual level, or even at a mental level, because we don't physically necessarily feel it until your body starts to say no and break down.
Yeah.
We ignore
It's also
it
uncomfortable. It's also uncomfortable, right? I mean, it's an uncomfortable pain, because it doesn't just go away. Tylenol will take the pain away, but when you're looking at your emotional pain, there is no Tylenol for that.
No.
So it's not quick, and that is hard, because most of us want everything quick, microwave, very fast. And so it's a difficult process.
Yeah, it is difficult. We do have havening, which is what I do, which we call like the 15 minutes to freedom technique. So it can actually be just about as quick as Tylenol for certain traumatic experiences. But if you have layers of trauma, obviously you've got to clear the layers.
Right.
And if you think of trauma as a tree, the earlier the seed takes root in your life, which for you is from birth, the stronger the roots are, the taller the tree is,
Right.
and the harder it
Right.
is to cut it down. So we have to take the time to, get rid of all the branches that have grown from that trauma tree, and ultimately try and get back to the root cause, that's maybe negative
Right.
self-talk, limiting beliefs and things like that, and cut it down at its
At
root
its roots.
to stop it
Yeah.
from growing again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I'd love to explore for you is, how did you, what work did you feel was really powerful? What was the big needle mover for you in terms of personal development? Because I know you started NLP that helped you really take back control and really leverage your superpower.
Yeah. Well, that's really what I did. I believe in coaching. So I've had
Mm-hmm.
coaches, mentors in my life, and books, just reading a lot of really good books that help with the brain. John Assaraf is the first one that comes to mind because I really like that book. And trying to really figure out, what makes me tick, what hurts me. Like when I wrote my book, honestly, Dr. Ruth, that was very cathartic for me because I had to go through each story. I had to re-experience them. And that was a beautiful thing because I was also able to take away its power. And that's
Yeah.
why I can talk about it so freely without breaking down, right? I used to break down, or I was ashamed, I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
But I realized that, I did go to therapy. So I've had a lot of therapy in my life, and I've done some havening, not a lot, but I did do some. So I introduced it. One of the therapists a couple years ago introduced that to me. And she also introduced a little bit of hypnosis to me, and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So I've worked on it throughout the years. It was a little bit here, a little bit there, and really started to develop, trying to be wiser about how I learn things and actually learning them, not just sitting in front of the boob tube, as I call it, and watching Netflix all day. I took the time to read a book. I took the time to take a course. I took the time to invest in a coach. I took the time to do that because I was worth it. And for a long time, I didn't want to do that for me. Like if you
Yeah.
told me to go buy something, I'd go buy something. But if you tell me
Yeah.
to invest in me, I'm like, that's a lot of money,
Yeah.
And in the last couple of years, I'm like, no, if I have the finances, if I can do it, I'm going to because
Yeah.
I need to,
Yeah. I think
and
it's really
yeah.
interesting you bring that point up, actually, because, we can very easily look at a new car,
Hmm.
that's $40,000 or something, and go, do you know what? I want that car. I'm going to take
Right.
out a payment plan,
Hmm.
and commit myself to payment over 10 years, uh, and
Right.
I'm okay with that. And
Right.
people don't even think about it. They just do it
Right.
because it's something
Right.
that gets them from A to B.
Right.
And
Right.
they might
Right.
want, a car that's, fancy because it's more comfy to get them from A to B, and that's all. But ultimately, it's something that gets them from A to B.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but with coaching, you could spend you, if you don't invest in coaching, it could take you a really, really long time
Yeah.
to get from A to B, and you
Yeah.
might not even get there.
Right. And you might not even get there. That is so true. And
you know?
I think people need to look at this a little bit differently. At least that's what I started doing. I started investing in me, and I have a couple of coaches and stuff like that that have
Yeah,
really helped me understand a lot of things that I know I wouldn't have seen on my own.
yeah,
And I still have some growing to do. I still have some more coaches I'm looking at,
yeah,
that I want to work with, and I will get there. I will get
yeah,
there. But I really do sign on to what you're saying because
yeah,
it's true. Getting to A to B without a guide, without somebody, is going to
yeah,
take you a hell of a lot longer. It
yeah.
just is.
Absolutely. And also,
Yeah.
you might, with a coach, or the right coach, or the right counselor, whoever it happens to be that it works for you,
Mhm.
could not just get you from A to B, but get you from A to Z or A
Mhm.
to Z.
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
in the same time it would have taken you to get from A to B by yourself.
So true. It
And
is
we
very,
talk
very true.
about, doing everything by ourselves. It's easy
Mhm.
to fail by ourselves, but to be successful, you need a tribe.
Yeah. Oh my
It
gosh,
takes a
yes, you.
tribe, doesn't it?
It
It
really
takes a
does.
community.
It really does. Yeah. And to be
Excellent.
successful, to be a good parent, it takes a village to, to work on yourself, to see what your flaws are, it takes a
Yeah,
village. People just need to invest in themselves. You're worth it. You're worth it. You're
yeah.
100% worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
Neena, I'd love, because this show is all about brain health and
Hmm.
unchaining your pain,
Hmm.
in the context of somebody that is experiencing or has experienced domestic violence and is really struggling with this,
Hmm.
with the trauma that they've had or are having, what would your one piece of advice be to somebody who's in that situation?
Oh, exactly what we were just talking about. Seek help.
Hmm.
100% seek help. You're not going to be able to do that effectively by yourself. You
Mm,
need to seek help. You need to seek somebody who can be there and guide you through it, because there's a lot that goes with that. It's not just the physical pain. There's a lot of mental trauma that goes through with that, and a lot of self-worth issues, a lot of limiting beliefs, it causes a lot of issues in your life.
yeah.
Seek help. That's what I did. I seeked help and seeked counseling. That's what helped me through it. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because I think it's so important that we kind of believe that we can get through it
Mhm.
by
Mhm.
ourselves, and actually we're in survival,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
by seeking help, you shift the situation in your life from survive to thrive,
Exactly. I love that. Yeah.
and that's what we want to be doing as individuals. We don't want to be surviving in life. We want to be thriving and
Right.
realizing our full potential, and leveraging our strengths, and not letting our limiting beliefs that we may have diminish the strengths that are there inside of us,
Right.
uh,
Oh,
and preventing them from being released.
right. Right. And taking back your power.
Yeah,
Take back your power. It's yours. They stole it from you. Okay, take it back.
take it back.
Take it back.
Take it right back.
Yeah.
Neena, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. How can people get hold of you?
Well, really, it's easy. So you can go on. Well, my website is being redeveloped. So if you guys go on there and it looks a little bit messy, it's being done. It's Straight Talk, No Sugar Added, and you can actually find me on any of the social media platforms with either Straight Talk, No Sugar Added or Neena Perez, which is Neena Perez. So yeah, either way.
And your book, Hit Me With Your Best Shot.
That's right. Hit me with your best shot. I actually have it right here. How I overcame a hard
Yay!
hitting life. Yeah, I'm very
Make
proud
sure
of that
you
book.
can go to Neena's website to get hold of that book. I encourage
Yeah.
you to do so. She's told an amazing story, and loads of great information in there.
Yeah.
Neena, thank you so much for joining on my show. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for sharing your story. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Just remember, everyone, this show is all about brain health, unchaining your pain. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better, and the show's here to help show you how.
To you by WINJECT Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.